Two stories affecting the BBC are happening today. One is that they're planning to trim around £600 million from the annual budget. This is after the licence fee has gone up by over £5 to £180 from next year. Also, perhaps more, perhaps at least as difficult as a public policy issue, a judge in Florida has set a trial date in a year's time for the US President Donald Trump's $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the doctoring of a clip on Panorama. We remember, of course, that the two bits of what Donald Trump were put together to change the meaning. The BBC took legal steps to try to dismiss the lawsuit, but the two-week hearing will take place in the Wilkie D. Ferguson Jr. US Courthouse in Miami. Let's speak to Michael Crick, the journalist and broadcaster who spent a lot of his career at the BBC. Michael, let's start with President Trump's action. This is now set to be heard in a year's time. What do you make of it?
Well, it's bad news. I think the BBC hoped that they would be able to argue that it was the defamation was a complete waste of time by Trump on the grounds that, as far as I can tell, nobody in America actually saw the program. And the BBC has apologized. And if anything, actually, the whole of the episode that's happened over the last few months in relation to that controversy has well established, I think, in the public mind, both here and probably in large parts of America, that Donald Trump's, or Don Trump, as I call him, his speech didn't, on the 6th of January,
2021, I think.
Yeah, 2021. He didn't call for people to be violent and violently assault the Capitol. So that's now well established, whereas there may have been some people who thought that he directly did in that speech. So in a way, the Panorama has helped Trump's reputation. But it's absolutely vital that the BBC fights this case, not just for the BBC's future, but for the future of journalism around the world. And we've seen in the United States how two big American news networks, CBS and ABC, caved into Donald Trump, paid out tens of millions of dollars for his presidential library, I think it was. And basically, he's been operating like a sort of mafia boss, threatening people. And of course, the reason why ABC and the CBS had to pay up is because they were worried about decisions that the administration might make or would make about their futures. Well, the BBC, it's got a lot less to worry about on that front. Donald Trump is not directly affecting the BBC's future in terms of decisions. And so it's vital that we stand up to this bully and make it clear that journalists are not going to be cowed.
But should there not be some redress? Michael, we worked together about 15 years ago. I've known you since that time. Not in a million years would you have done an edit like that. Not in a million years would you have changed the meaning of what an interviewer said. As you say, the BBC's apologised. Yeah, the Director General is going eventually. Tim Davie, the Director of, or the Head of News, Chief Executive of News, Deborah Turness, she's gone too. There have been serious changes within the BBC, but nonetheless, isn't Donald Trump, love him or loathe him, is he not entitled to some redress for that mistake being made?
For what? He's had an apology. No damage was caused in the United States. If he thinks there was damage to his reputation here, he could have sued here. He had, but he didn't. And so I don't know what would the redress be for?
Well, I mean, he argues they defamed him. He argues that, I mean, your opinion is that he was...
defame somebody. You can only defame somebody if somebody's listening. Nobody was listening in the United States. Trump hasn't come up with a single viewer in the United States that watched this program because it wasn't broadcast in the United States. There were apparently some ways that you could have seen the program if you'd wanted to. And frankly, it was a very pro-Trump program by all accounts, full of interviews with Trump supporters. So I don't think there was any. You can only sue somebody for defamation if there's damage. But there's a more serious issue here, Peter. In this country, and indeed through most countries, the Western Europe, political leaders do not sue for defamation. It's very rare as it ever happened. And there's a good reason for that, because there's a conflict of interest. In other words, because political leaders are in a position to make decisions about the future of newspapers and of television and broadcasters and so on, then the danger is they will go around suing people in that industry.
I mean, it has happened.
And it's basically a form of extortion. And that's what Trump has been up to when it comes to CBS and ABC. And the BBC should do everything in its power to say, we're not putting up with this. We are standing for journalists worldwide. And you should join in that, Peter.
If they fight it, Michael, I'm not going to defend the BBC for making up a clip, but
Nor am I.
And I know you're not doing that. If they fight it, this is going to cost a huge amount of money.
Not necessarily. It will be more expensive than it is here.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to be 10 billion because he sued for huge amounts of money previously and got much less in the end.
I was in a discussion with a former Donald Trump defamation lawyer, not working on this case, on the Turkish English language channel a few weeks ago, and he said actually Trump would probably settle for a single-figure amount of millions, but it's the principle. And if he does it, I mean, the thing about Trump is he's a bully, and if you're weak and you give in, he actually.
But the BBC, I know exactly. And he'll do
it again.
Okay. Michael, I know exactly.
It was French television and Italian television.
I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. But the principle, a lot of people will see this as the BBC made a mistake. He's suing. Make it go away. Just give him a bit of cash.
Well, that's dead easy, isn't it? You know, somebody comes along and threatens to, vandalise your car, and you pay them 10 quid to go away.
But that often happens in libel trials, as you know.
No, well, the thing about libel trials, Peter, is that you've actually got to prove damage.
Yep.
There's no damage being proved here. So it's not a conventional libel trial.
No, it's certainly not conventional in any way. Let's talk about the BBC planning to trim £600 million from its annual budget in a move thought to entail more job losses and programme cuts. This is as the licence fee has gone up. Should the BBC be smaller, Michael?
Well, it's going to have to be. It's tragic, and there is a lot of thought, obviously, going into the future of the BBC and how the BBC moves from being based on licence fee income to other models. And nobody's quite come up with the answer with this yet. But in the long term, you have a problem in that the number of people paying the licence fee is going down by about 250,000 people a year. So the income is going down, and the costs are as great as ever. There are cuts they can make. There are parts of the BBC. I mean, for instance, the outside contributors department, you may have dealings with them as well, are utterly incompetent and inefficient. If the rest of the financial departments are like them, then there are huge economies and efficiencies that can be made. But nonetheless, there are going to have to be, serious cuts. If you're talking about 600 million here, serious cuts to output and programming and types of programming. I would argue, stick resolutely to the public service element of the BBC, because that is hugely important in the whole role of journalism in holding people in power to account. And so, and maybe you have to sort of do your drama and other things on a much more commercial way. I mean, the BBC's moving towards that anyway.
Yeah. Well, they're often. I mean, you look at
caps, say that nobody's paid more than the Prime Minister or the Cabinet Secretary, who actually earns more than the Prime Minister.
Yes.
Those kind of things. But
and they've done that with a lot of dramas, haven't they? I was watching a BBC drama the other night, Industry, and it's on HBO, and it's on, they have things like The Night Manager and other different services as well. It'll be very interesting to see. What sort of Director General should they appoint, do you think, now Tim Davie is going?
Well, it's got to be somebody who knows the field, who knows the opportunities that are out there within the broadcasting world. Somebody who hasn't spent their life in the BBC, I would argue, and who can bring in the benefit of outside experience, but also somebody who has got the skills to handle the political waters and the controversies that inevitably arise in anybody's career as a BBC Director General. It's one of the most difficult jobs in public life. Not quite as difficult, though, as being Prime Minister.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Much appreciated. That's Michael Crick, the journalist and broadcaster.